Hello and welcome to another episode of the CIRS Group podcast. I'm Jacie,
And I'm Barbara.
and today we are talking about periods.
And we lost all of our male viewers, all three of them.
Goodbye. Now we're going to talk about fun stuff. No, I'm just kidding. We're actually talking about periods. So this is a topic that has been brought up a lot in our group. It does seem like periods and CIRS have some kind of confounding effects. And so we kind of wanted to discuss those in today's podcast. But as always, Barbara and I are not medical professionals. We are CIRS patients. We've read the textbook. We have a community of people who are healing from CIRS, but none of this should be taken as medical advice.
So yeah, as women, anyone who has experienced a period knows that they're not always super pleasant. There are usually some symptoms leading up to the period, and maybe on the first day or two, they're not fun. For me, they haven't been like super bad over the course of my life, but they haven't been like super easy and nothing either. But what we are noticing within the group is that around your period, you will get worsening symptoms of CIRS symptoms. You might be more emotional or more emotionally dysregulated. You may get more headaches, greater fatigue. The other thing that I personally noticed with me, because I also have ADHD, is worsening ADHD symptoms, which there's research backing that up as well. In fact, I think I was PMSing the week that I found out I might have ADHD. And so the symptoms were very pronounced that particular week for me. Mind racing and unable to focus, super distracted, all that fun stuff. So yeah, that's so if your period seems worse as you've gotten sicker with CIRS, you are not alone, is kind of the message that we have for you today.
Out of curiosity, do your GI symptoms get worse around your period as well?
There's a yes, is the short answer. And I was always told by my elders, I don't know, whoever I read or something
No, I
about
like this because it
periods.
makes it sound like lore. Like
Oh
these are your
God,
elven elders.
my elven elders. The cramping of the ovaries and all of that in perioding. Um, yes, I'm using real medical terms here, guys. Actually will cause kind of a cramping and rushing out of other things.
The period poops.
Period poops. Exactly. I've totally experienced that throughout my life. So I don't know that that's necessarily CIRS specific, but because I do tend towards diarrhea and like having the GI issues of that nature, that's certainly something that comes right up with me almost every month. Or it's not as bad as it used to be. I will give CIRS treatment that. So maybe there's something there for that too.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry for prying.
No, trust me. I think everyone knows all of our health stuff at this point. It's all out there on the internet.
So 2 points I wanted to bring up. One, CIRS is chronic inflammatory response syndrome, meaning it's an inflammatory response. So anything that changes your inflammation levels is going to change your symptoms. And so I think that's part of the reason why a lot of us experience these worsening symptoms, both on the period side and the CIRS side around that time of the month, is because just our overall level of inflammation is higher. So to that end, some things you can do to kind of mitigate that is whatever your inflammation reduction strategies are. And we talk about this being not only CIRS treatments, but also whatever biohacks seem to work best for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we have seen some people in the group mention like Omaprem or some other high dose fish oil supplement that can help. That also helps with ADHD symptoms, research shows, but also with PMS and period cramping and all of that fun stuff. But yeah, if you love the sauna, if that relaxes you, gosh, definitely go when you're in the throes of PMSing or whatever, or tanning or cold plunge if you're one of those crazy people. Any of those things that people do to feel better. Try it out with perioding. I'm gonna keep saying that. Menstruating is
You're
weird.
making fetch a thing. I love it.
But you noticed, I think I remember you mentioning at one point that your autoimmune flares would get a little bit worse around periods too, right?
Yeah, and that's why I was asking about your GI symptoms. It seems like, with CIRS, there's some like hallmark manifestations of how the CIRS archetypes, as I like to call them, is like mine was definitely joint pain to do with my autoimmune disease that was triggered by CIRS. And so I think whatever your hallmark symptoms are, which for you are GI issues and for me would be joint pain, I would notice an increase in those symptoms around that time of the month. And I think this really speaks to the importance of tracking your symptoms and tracking the situations you're in around the time you're tracking those symptoms. So in the group, we do have a symptom tracker that you can download and use for yourself. But essentially, you rate your different symptoms on a scale from 1 to 5. And then, throughout the month and throughout the months of CIRS treatment, you can kind of track to see how things are going.
Yeah. And another thing that I think both you and I use for more to just know when your period's coming is to use a period tracking app. And just, find one that fits your budget or your preferences of features. But it's kind of nice to know when it's coming. I have been known to calendar period incoming like the week of it, just so I know that if I am overly distracted, overly emotional, overly anything, that I have some context as to why, and I can kind of go easy on myself.
I have to say, as someone who has access to Barbara's calendar, first of all, it makes me laugh every week not every week, but every month when I see that coming up. I'm like, good to know.
Good to know, right?
But two, it's kind of nice to know. Like, I mean, not only for yourself, for sure, but like for the people around you too. It's like if you can just give them a little heads up, like, hey, I'm going through CIRS and now we're having this other monthly event occur in the next couple of days. So it'd be nice if I can have whatever, accommodations you need during that time of the month.
Right.
I think can be really helpful to the people around you. And I was just telling Barbara before we started recording that my period tracking app now has like a partners feature where it like warns your partner for what time of the month you're in, which I'm not sure about. I would like to see what messages the partners are getting, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it would be nice to have some control over that, but also a good idea in concept overall, just depending on how it's handled. The other thing, kind of speaking of partners, another lever that people may want to pull is whether or not you're on birth control. That definitely has an impact. I noticed some changes for me. I had my IUD removed earlier this year. It was just the copper one, so non-hormonal, but I was still just kind of worried about having a foreign body in my body at all times, especially one that can last 10 years. None of that sounded correct to me. It was just more convenient than other birth control options. So, but I did notice overall, my periods have gotten shorter and a little bit easier to deal with, a little bit less crampy since I got rid of it. So, not to say I'm any less irritable the week leading up to my period, but it does help, just as from a physical standpoint to have gotten rid of it. So it just might be something for you to consider if that's something that you are able to consider.
And that was actually the second point I wanted to bring up is the hormones around CIRS in your period. So we know that CIRS impacts the production of sex hormones. So what happens with CIRS is you have this inflammatory response. Your body produces cytokines, which are proteins that attach to the leptin receptors in your pituitary gland. And it reduces your ability to create MSH, or melanocyte stimulating hormone, which is the precursor to a lot of different hormones, including androgen hormones. So it's not the blood work they normally track for CIRS is your testosterone to DHEA. Testosterone is the precursor to estrogen. So it's kind of like this domino effect all the way down to the sex hormones that are actually going to impact your period. So as you treat your CIRS and correct those sex hormones, you're going to notice changes in your periods. For me, there was a period of time where I would have just one day of extreme cramping, like just like fetal position. I want to rip out my uterus level of cramping. But it seems like every period since that first started happening, it's been getting easier. So I think as my sex hormones are correcting, some of those like more extreme symptoms are correcting as well.
That's great. And also on the note of CIRS treatment, if you're following the Shoemaker protocol, like I hope you are, we have noticed a couple members noticing that things get a little bit worse before they get better when doing the binders. So that's that step, or even VIP spray later at the end of treatment. Both medications are doing stuff and kicking stuff up in your body. With the binders, they're kicking up the toxins as they're being pulled out. I'm glad that anyone watching video can see my great hand movements there. But then also VIP is, kicking things into gear that should be in gear in your body. So that can also, again, like you just said, affect some changes. So some people may experience that, issues getting worse before they get better. So just to reassure you that maybe that's normal, but certainly something to bring up with your doctor either way. If you experience any negative side effects during treatment, you should always bring them up with your doctor to make sure it's normal, and also to potentially adjust if they are to the point of being unbearable. But another thing to think about as well.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I wanted to touch on and kind of just discuss, not necessarily say like this is directly associated with CIRS, is we know that CIRS, because of the inflammatory response and the pressure it's putting onto the transcriptome, can turn on certain genes, which for me like turned on an autoimmune disease. But two common diseases around periods, both endometriosis and PCOS, a few members of our group have said they think this is directly related to CIRS. They notice symptoms of these things after their exposure. So that is another consideration is, I'm not saying they are, but like, could they possibly be related to CIRS because of the pressure that it's putting on your transcriptome and your genetic expression? Maybe, probably, almost definitely.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's something to look at and be hopeful for, that it might be able to be reversed when you get to that VIP step.
Oh yeah. We hope this episode was helpful, enjoyable, informative, all of the
All
above.
of the above. Yeah.
I think it was. I had a good time.
Good.
If you are looking for more resources and support on your CIRS journey, if you want to complain about your period cramps with me, I am there for you. DM me over at the cirsgroup.com.
See you there.